Today we are going to learn how to make a digital landscape in Photoshop using different shapes and gradient tools and the brush tools. So the first thing you're going to do is open up Photoshop. You'll go File, New. You're going to create a new document. It's going to be 5 by 7 by 300 pixels per inch. So check to see what your settings are here. Make sure it says inches. So I'm going to do a landscape. So you can also do a portrait if you wanted to, where it's vertical rather than horizontal. It's up to you, doesn't matter. It's just 5 by 7 by 300. Make sure it's inches and pixels per inch, and then hit OK. Okay, so sorry, I'm on a weird brush right now. Now you have your document open. The first thing we're going to do is create a new layer. So we go down to our layers palette and click on the little icon next to the garbage can. It looks like a piece of paper with the corner turned up. Create new layer. In that layer I'm going to do a gradient fill. This is going to be the background of my landscape. So I'm going to go over to my tools panel here, and the paint bucket tool or the gradient tool, they're both hidden under the same tool button. So I'm going to click on gradient. Up here my options have changed to figure out what color I want to use. So I have a lot of gradients pre-installed on mine. You can also create your own custom gradient depending on what color you want. I'm going to do sort of maybe like a sunsetty sky today. Okay. You can also change what the gradient looks like. It can be radial. The first one is linear. So it depends on what you want it to do. Okay. And then you just click and drag your mouse down in that area and it will create that fill for you. Okay. Now I'm going to double click where it says layer 1. I'm going to double click and call this my sky. Okay, you want to rename all your layers in this project so that you know what is in each layer, what everything is, and that way if you need to make changes it's really simple to do so. So now maybe I'm going to add some clouds. So I'll call this layer clouds. It's a new layer, brand new layer. And keep in mind that the white and gray checkerboard just means it's a transparent layer. There's no pixel information in there, so that's why we don't see anything. So I'm going to switch to my brush. And I have a lot of different brushes in here, so you're going to have to play around with what works for you. I'm going to try this one, I think. And then keep in mind you have the bracket keys on your keyboard next to your P. So the more you press, the bigger or smaller it will get. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go down to my foreground and background colors, and I'm going to pick up this color here to create my clouds with, I think. Okay. I don't like that. Edit, undo, or you can just hit Command Z. So I like how this kind of looks if I just dot it. And you get some random values in there. Maybe I'll change my color again to sort of like this orangey pink color and overlap that. You can change the opacity of your brush so that it's less opaque. It's like a lighter color. Okay, so I added some clouds to my sky. Now I'm going to add a background layer. So let's call this mountains. Again, you can go with your brush tool here. You could also try maybe a shape tool if you wanted to. You could do a custom shape tool. There's some presets here that you can play with. Let's see if there's anything that would work for mountains. I'm not seeing anything I like, so I'm going to create my own shape using the brush tool. Okay, so I'm going to go back to my brush. I'm going to click up here and change it to just a regular hard edged brush. It's kind of small. Make it a little bit bigger so we can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about atmospheric perspective. Things that are farther away from you are going to be lighter or sort of out of focus maybe. So what color should I do my mountains? Let's see. Maybe I'll do them sort of like a silhouette kind of a thing. I'll go here. Okay, so also guys, keep in mind the rule of thirds. If you divide your composition into 3 sections, both horizontally and vertically, that can help you decide where interesting elements will go, where your horizon line should go. So I'm going to do, I think, my horizon line maybe up around here. So I'm going to end up covering up some of my clouds, and that's okay. So I'm going to draw sort of some little mountain range here. So if I give myself a closed shape, like if I go back to where I started, I can quickly switch over to the paint bucket tool and just fill that in with, wait, edit, undo, go back to my brush. What's going on here? Ah, my opacity was different. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this layer, start over. That was my mistake. You want to make sure that all of these things are correct for when you start. I would keep everything to an opacity of 100 just to start with, because you can always adjust it later. So here's my little mountain range. I'm going to make sure I have a closed shape here. Okay, if it's not a closed shape and I click on Paint Bucket Tool, it'll fill the whole background up. So now I'm going to fill that up. If you have this weird funky line where it doesn't quite get everything, just click it again and it'll fill it in. Okay, now what I could do is change my color. So maybe I want to get a little bit darker because things that are closer to us will be darker, more saturated. Switch back to my brush tool and I can draw another layer of mountains in front. So that overlapping thing that we've talked about will happen, creating more depth in your composition. So then I would fill that in with the paint bucket tool. Oh, what didn't I do? I didn't create a new layer. So let's go ahead and undo and just step backwards. Okay, so again, new layer, call it mountains 2. Okay, so this is the second layer of mountains. All right, and I understand that most of you will probably forget to do this too, so that's why I'm just reminding you. Make those extra layers so that way if I want to change something, I can easily do so. Okay, now let's say I'm not really happy with where I place that. Okay, maybe I think, maybe I should scooch it over a little bit. Move tool will move everything in the layer. Okay, but now we have this blank space. So I can actually click here and just drag it, and that will transform it by sort of stretching it. Okay, if you don't want to do that, you can also go to Edit, Transform, and you can get to Scale, and it will increase the size proportionally, but I don't mind about stretching it. So I'm going to do that, accept those changes. All right, and maybe I'll make another layer of mountains. And go ahead and now you can't see this because it's the same color as my mountains behind it, right? But I will show you a quick trick. So if I click back on mountains 2, hold on, let me label this one, mountains 3. If I click back on this layer, I can actually change the opacity. So, you know, you can get some kind of neat effects that way where it blends with the background colors and you have that more of a feeling of that atmospheric perspective. I'm going to just scooch this up a little bit more to get some more overlapping happening. And I'll stretch this. So I'm happy with it. Okay, so now I have some mountains. Now I need to work on maybe my middle ground. So I could use my shape tool. Maybe I'll click on my rectangle tool. Click on new layer. I'm going to call this grass. I'm going to change the color to like a pretty greenish color. And I'm just going to draw a rectangle in here. Okay. And I could say, you know what? I want to fill that with a gradient. Maybe I want it to be a, you know, go from light to dark green. Let's see if there's anything good in here, or even something like this. That's kind of weird. That could be kind of neat. And if you want to, you could even select one that's already installed, and you can adjust it by clicking here. Now I can change that first color from white to maybe a green like this. Can scooch this color stop over. Maybe I get rid of these. I can just click that, pick them up and drag them off the screen. You know, and then you get sort of this pretty glowing effect with the grass. And I'm going to cover this with some texture in a minute. So as long as you're happy with that, I'm happy with that. Okay. So in your compositions, you need to make sure you have at least 10 layers, you use at least 2 shapes, at least 1 gradient, your brush tool. So I've done my brush tool, I've used 1 shape, I've used 2 gradients, and I don't have enough layers yet. So now I'm going to figure out, what do I want in my foreground? So maybe I want some trees really, really far away. Okay, so I'm going to make a new layer, and I'm going to call this like background trees. Okay, and then you can click on your brush tool, and then maybe there's some sort of like speckled kind of thing that'll work really well for you. And you're going to have to experiment a little bit to see what works. I'm going to try that one for now. So I'll go with like a darker green maybe, because it's kind of far away. And I'll kind of, and you can do sort of like this weird little tree line far away. And if you want to get sloppy, that's okay. Because what I could do is say, if I want that hard edge of the horizon line back, I can just pick up this layer and move it in front of those trees. So you're reordering your layers to create whatever look you want to go for. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger just to save some time, and I'm going to keep going across. Okay. And then maybe I'll change colors to a lighter color, give it a little bit of depth. Maybe I'll change my brush to something else. That's kind of pretty. Okay. And maybe, let's see what that looks like. Maybe I'll try a yellowy color, more of a yellowy green. Think of yourself as Bob Ross in this project a little bit. Okay, so let's say you're happy with that. Now maybe I want like a road of some kind coming in through these trees. Actually, I'll go and make some more trees. I'm going to make a new layer. I'll call this more trees in the background here. And then maybe I'll go back to this brush, darker color. So this is still background stuff. And then maybe I can go to my shapes see, is there something I can use to create? I will go with the Polygon Tool. Right now it wants 8 sides. I'm going to say I want 3 sides so I can create sort of this triangular shape here. Fill, I'm going to do sort of like a dirt fill, dirt colored fill. Okay, now that doesn't look like a road, right? Nope. So I'm going to click on my move tool here, scooch it down. This is where I want it to sort of start. It's going to go back into space. And I'm going to click Edit Transform. Edit Transform. So here you will have a bunch of different options as far as how to transform it. You can change the scale, the size. You can rotate it, distort perspective. We tried warp before already, so I'm going to click on that for right now. Depending on what you want to do with your shapes, other options might work better for you. So I'm going to give this sort of like a curvy thing so it looks a little bit more natural. Maybe it's sort of winding through the forest here. You know, going into space, the smaller something is, it means it's farther away in your composition, right? And accept it. If you don't like it, you can always redo it. Now, my road is covering some trees. I can easily, let me rename this road. I can easily bring these trees on top of the road by clicking on that layer. And see, now the little leaves are on top of that road. So maybe I'll need another layer of trees. We'll call this trees on the left side of my composition. Using my brush tool, I can go back in over here and create some more trees. And then these trees I can kind of go back into and let that road sort of disappear. Okay? And so on and so forth. Maybe I want to have a tree in the foreground that is large and very obviously a tree that is close to the viewer. So let's draw that. I'm going to get like a nice warm brown. I'm going to create a new layer, call it Big Tree. Okay, I'm going to change my brush, something a little bit more like this. Maybe my tree actually goes off the page. Okay, so but for right now I'm going to just draw a tree. Give it some branches at the top. You guys don't really want to do lollipop trees. I mean, unless you're doing a Candyland themed landscape. Okay, and then maybe I want to switch to a smaller brush so I can get some sort of smaller types of branches in there for some little variation. Okay, maybe I want to go bigger so I can kind of fill in that trunk. You could also fill it in with the paint bucket tool. Okay. And again, you could decide, you know what, I don't like where that tree is. I want to move it over here. So there's your move tool. Maybe you want it off the composition, you know. Maybe you want it closer to the road. It's up to you guys. Alright, so you'll figure out what works for you. I'm going to just keep it over here. Maybe it's too big for my composition though. So I'm going to go to Edit, Transform, Scale. And I'll just click on this little corner. If you guys click on this little chain link between width and height, it'll lock the proportion so it won't get, you know, short and fat or tall and skinny. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller. I think that looks pretty good. And I'm going to accept those changes. So now I'm going to do another layer called Leaves. Click on my brush tool. And they have some different functions. This is like a scatter brush tool for the leaves. I downloaded some new ones today. I don't know what they look like, but maybe we could give them a shot. Let's see. So this isn't a new layer, so if I don't like it, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to like that one. Alright, so I could just delete this layer, make a new one, call it leaves. So I'm going to go back up here to this one. Going to change my foreground color to a nice leaf color. Maybe I'll do some like fall leaves, like they've started to change. Now I'll go with green. And the background color, I'm just going to click on that where it's white here and change my background color as well. That will give you some depth to your leaves, okay? And I'm going to make them bigger. Yep. That's too big. Oops. And see, it's a scatter tool, so it creates different sizes of the leaves, and they're also sort of facing in different directions. So I'm going to keep changing my colors so you get that natural sort of feel to your tree. Okay, maybe I need some more highlights, so I'll go back lighter, a little bit lighter. Some highlights in there. Okay. I can also create some grass. So going back to my brush tool, the grass blades are right here. They do sort of the same thing. So you can create a natural look, and then the farther you get, you know, the smaller you want those blades to be. The bigger you are. Let's do some in the front here maybe. You know, and you can blend away the edge of the road, make it look kind of natural. Okay. So that should kind of do it. So you want to have something in your foreground. So that would be my tree here. You want to have something in the middle ground, so I sort of have some trees, some grass and stuff like that. And then my background, I have my mountains, my clouds. If you decide you want to go back in and add anything else, like I can click on my cloud layer, create a new layer, and put sun maybe. And I could add another shape, so I'll click on my ellipse tool. And I can create a really bright sun setting behind these mountains. So I'll click on my shift key to make sure it stays perfectly round. Okay. And that looks pretty good. And then what I can do is click on outer glow and have it look like the sun is glowing. So I'm going to click on that same color, maybe make it a little bit orangier. And we can make that glow really big. You see how that's creating a really nice effect in the sky? Okay. And then hit OK. And you could also say, you know what, I don't want it to be that intense, so maybe I'll change the opacity of that layer so it's a little bit more subtle, or keep it at 100. It's up to you. Okay. You could also, if I want to duplicate, let's see. Okay, so if I want to take this tree here and create another one in the background that's sort of similar, what I can do is I can hit the shift key. So I click on both of those layers, big tree and leaves. I can duplicate them by clicking, holding my mouse down, dragging it to the new layer tool. So now I've copied it. Okay? And what I can also do is go to layer, merge those layers that are selected. So now I'll call this little tree. Okay? I'm going to click on my move tool. I'm going to drag it. So see, now I have this extra tree. I'm going to have to fill in some leaves later, but that's okay. Or what I could do is actually go edit, transform, flip, okay, and then edit, transform, scale, lock those proportions by clicking on the chain link, drag this in, okay, and maybe you don't want to lock the proportions. Maybe you want this tree to be taller and skinnier so it looks a little bit different, right? And then that one can go here, or I could move it in here and add some more leaves to it, so it's up to you. But that will create depth as well, because now you have trees, but this one's a little bit bigger than that one. I'm actually going to make it a little bit smaller. Okay, so that's your scale, or your relative size. It's the same type of object, but because this one's farther away, it appears smaller. Okay? Alright, so I'm going to click on New Layer again. Title this Signature. Go back to my brush tool. Find my signature. I'm going to make it I guess that yellow will work, and pop it right in there. Oh, another thing you guys can do, which I forgot to mention, is the layer properties. So that road kind of looks a little flat to me, so I could click on road layer and double click on it, and these layer style options will come up. Alternately, I can also click on layer style. Alright, and we could do a pattern overlay. So you can scroll down and find something maybe like a little bit more natural that kind of like looks like rocks. Those are like river rocks kind of a thing. Okay, so let's try that one. You can change the dimensions of it so it's more like rocks. Okay. And you could go back in later too and fix the edges, put more grass around it so it doesn't look so harsh. But that's pretty much the gist of it. So my signature's in place. I've got my layers, I've got my shapes, I've got my gradients and my paintbrush objects. So I'm going to go File, Save As, and you guys are going to save it into the finals, into your finals folder when you're all done, and save it into my final projects folder with your last name in the correct folder, and you guys will be all done with that. So have fun with this, be creative. I would recommend looking at images online, maybe images you've taken of places that you visited, to give you some ideas about what you want to create. Okay? Thanks for watching.